What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. My first actual video of the offseason thus far, so I'm pretty excited, and what better way to start it than going over a handful of players that I'm most excited about. I shouldn't have to remind you guys, but with the draft not yet having been completed, things are going to change. ADPs are going to change, rosters are going to change, and overall competition for targets and touches is going to be different. With some of these players, it shouldn't dramatically impact how I feel about them or their value. But considering that it's early April, it's just going to be impossible to predict if these players are going to be fair values in the draft or not. With that being said though, make sure you're following us on all social medias, or if you're interested in purchasing our draft package for the upcoming season, check out our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But with that, let's hop right into the video. I'm going to start with what should be the most obvious pick from this list, which is Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray is coming off of a very productive rookie season. He finished as the quarterback 8 last year, and he really proved how dynamic he was as a passer and rusher combination. He totaled second at the quarterback position in rushing yards with 544. He threw for over 3,700 yards, while also completing 64.4% of his passes, which by today's standards isn't drastically high, but still very respectable for a mobile quarterback who quite frankly was lacking some high-end receiving options. That got fixed this season. As we all know, DeAndre Hopkins is now an Arizona Cardinal, and having a player like DeAndre Hopkins on your side of the field has a lot more benefits than meets the eye. Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the league, easily top 3 in my opinion. That's going to force a lot of teams to put double coverage on him, leaving open Larry Fitzgerald if he doesn't retire. But Christian Kirk is also a special talent himself. He's one of the players that has the ability to take almost any pass to the house. He has big playability, which we haven't really seen outside of spurts this season, but with most of the coverage going to be put onto DeAndre Hopkins, this should open up a ton of more opportunities for Christian Kirk, Kyler Murray in the run game as well. Earlier this offseason, I put together a video of the top rookie plays, and in that research process, I watched every big play of Kyler Murray, also every rushing play from him, and there were numerous times that he gets into the secondary using just his legs. Now, if there's a safety over the top, assisting and covering DeAndre Hopkins, that's just going to open up more rushing lanes for Kyler Murray and the running backs. So Kenyon Drake, who's taking the spot of David Johnson, should have an opportunity to shine this year as well, and we really like him too. I'm not saying Kenyon Drake is as good of a player or a receiver as David Johnson, but Kenyon Drake is no slouch either. We've always wanted to see him get more touches, more targets, and that's exactly what Arizona was able to give to him last season. Expect more of the same. They are expected to add another running back to the committee. I would like to see them get a big tight end, someone else to have as a receiving weapon in the end zone. But both of those two items on my Arizona Cardinals wish list are likely going to be solved in the draft, and thus further potentially boosting the positive outlook for Kyler Murray. So for those reasons, he's really high on my list of players I'm excited for. His ADP is going to be dramatically higher than it was last season, and as a rookie, it was already like a top 10 options in most scoring formats. Does my excitement translate to me having him on some or many of my fantasy teams? Probably not. I usually elect to draft quarterbacks later, but that's not to say that his value may not be fair come draft time. Players like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those are going to be clearly taken ahead of him. So if there is a tier break and a gap in between them in the draft process, who knows, there may be enough value for me to make a double take and potentially draft him in the middle rounds. While not typically my style, I'm not going to rule anything out at this point in the offseason. We're going to move over to the next player I'm excited about, and that is Terry McLaurin of the Washington Redskins. I really love the potential upside that McLaurin brings to the table this upcoming season. Dwayne Haskins has already been named, or the coaching staff has at least moved forward with the notion that Haskins is going to be the clear-cut number 1 starter at this point. Last season, it was common knowledge that he wasn't going to begin the season as the starter. So a lot of those valuable training camp reps that we're not sure what's going to happen with this season, he should be able to have heading into 2020. Historically, we've seen quarterbacks take dramatic jumps from year 1 to year 2. Those jumps are much more prevalent than we see at any other position. Wide receivers, it's usually that 3rd year, so Terry McLaurin may get a knock from there. We're not expecting him to be leaps and bounds better, but with a better, more conducive offense, the opportunity for him to succeed should be much greater than it was in 2019. And when I said he's not expected to be leaps and bounds better, it's because he doesn't really need to improve in many areas of his game. If we're talking contested catch rate, yards per target, yards per reception, per pass route, his involvement involvement in the red zone, all of these things are very positive marks that he had in his rookie season. Now, what wasn't positive was the total amount of passing plays that the Washington Redskins were able to give him. And contrary to popular belief, it wasn't because the Washington Redskins elected to run the ball more than other teams did. No, they were about middle of the pack in that category, but the total plays that they had, because they had such a poor offense and beatable defense, it just meant that the other teams had the ball in their possession a lot more often than the Washington Redskins did. In fact, they ranked 32nd in the league in total plays ran. So with new head coach Ron Rivera, who does have a history of playing winning football, in combination with Dwayne Haskins and a full offseason projecting him out as the starter, with Terry McLaurin, who already played very well in his rookie season with the potential to take it to the next level in 2020, it's a combination that promotes a lot of positive things about Terry McLaurin, and right now his ADP, it doesn't reflect that. They didn't bring anybody in who's going to be a major contributor in this offense in the receiving game in free agency. The best player that they really brought in at this point has been Cody Latimer. So expect a lot of the holes to be filled in the draft process. But jumping back to his ADP, it doesn't reflect all of these positive things about Terry McLaurin in the upcoming season. In fact, he is being drafted in current ADP lower than he finished last season. Wide receiver 27 was his finish. Wide receiver 32 is where he's being drafted right now. Clearly, ADP is going to change, and Terry McLaurin I definitely see as a potential riser as we get closer to the season. But as it stands right now, he leaves a lot to be excited about and is a player we should all be keeping an eye on. Let's move over to a running back, and it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that I added Austin Ekeler to this list. Melvin Gordon is now a Denver Bronco, which leaves Austin Ekeler as the main option at the running back position for the LA Chargers, and we saw exactly how fruitful that position can be, and with Melvin Gordon not going to be vulturing these red zone touches, it leaves a lot of room for upside with Austin Ekeler, who's not being valued anywhere near where he finished last season. While I am excited to see what Austin Ekeler can put together leading this backfield, I do have to admit and play devil's advocate in the fact that Tyrod Taylor is a significant drop-off from Phillip Rivers. Not only does Phillip Rivers love dumping the ball off to the running back position, but he's also a capable quarterback who was able to sustain drives and put the ball down the field and get them in scoring position quite often. Tyrod Taylor, while a mobile quarterback, he has been known to play quite conservatively, especially if you track him back to his days in Buffalo. One of the few mobile quarterbacks who did play a game manager-esque style of football, a conservative style, and one that never really led to a ton of scoring opportunities for his team. With that obvious downgrade being known and being out there, that should impact his ADP to lower it. They will also likely bring in another running back, which most people will fear will take red zone touches away from him. And it's pretty clear why they would think that. Austin Ekeler, as soon as Melvin Gordon returned, was not getting a lot of touches in the red zone as opposed to what his involvement was earlier on in the season, pre-Melvin Gordon arrival. But you have to understand that Melvin Gordon earned that position. You're talking about one of the better red zone running backs in the league, excluding his rookie season. In 48 other games, he scored 47 total times. So almost every game he was getting a touchdown, or at least averaging one, and it is not a new practice to wear down as much tread on the tires of running backs who are expected to leave in free agency the following offseason. So I think we all can agree that the likelihood of Austin Ekeler losing a significant amount of red zone touches to players like Justin Jackson or a potential new addition they add in the draft, I understand that they are less likely to invest high draft capital into the running back position simply because they're paying Austin Ekeler top 10 running back numbers on a per season average. But to summarize everything, I do understand this is a significant downgrade in scoring opportunities and overall effectiveness for moving the ball down the field. But transitioning to a mobile quarterback from a pure pocket passer like Phillip Rivers, there is some room for improvement when it comes to his efficiency, and his involvement is probably going to be somewhere in the middle of where he started at the beginning of last season and where he finished at the tail end of last season. Will that constitute fair value in the draft? That's to be determined. But I think we all can admit it is going to be exciting to see what Austin Ekeler can do as the leader of this backfield for the upcoming season. Let's move over to the next player who's a wide receiver, and I think one of the more safe options on this list of players I'm excited for, and that's Adam Theilen of the Minnesota Vikings. With Stephon Diggs out of town and over to Buffalo, there's a lot less competition for targets this season than there was in previous seasons with Kirk Cousins at the helm. One thing to keep in mind though is that this team really did not throw the ball as often as we would like for a fantasy receiver, especially one who could be borderline wide receiver one when it comes comes to draft capital. Maybe if we're lucky, he should be a high-end wide receiver too. I'm not projecting him to fall too much further than that, barring any significant trade news, of course. But what we know about Adam Thielen heading into this season is that he is going to be in a prime position to eat up a ton of targets. One other benefit is he's coming off of a subpar season in which a lot of fantasy owners got burnt from last year. When we see that combination of underperforming the year prior, coupled with increased opportunity, usually that equates to fantasy value when it comes to ADP, and maybe that's going to happen this year, but this isn't too much about ADP. Let's talk more about what his situation is coming into this season. This team funnels targets to the wide receiver position. He has shown incredible chemistry with Kirk Cousins as an outlet, a chain mover, and even in the red zone. His first season coupled with Kirk Cousins, he did score 9 touchdowns, which is very promising. But when I mentioned that this team funnels targets to the wide receiver position, Adam Thielen is one of the main beneficiaries in that aspect. Despite only playing in 10 games last season, throughout Kirk Cousins' Minnesota career, Adam Thielen has still garnered 19.3% of his total targets. You can imagine just how much higher that percentage would be had he played in those other 6 games last season. Now Stephon Diggs is out of town. That should only shoot up from there. One major concern, of course, is the overall volume. This team has heavily relied on the running back position, especially last season when it came to the combination of Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook, of course. Regardless, Adam Thielen's role in the offense is integral, and the running back position for this team stayed relatively healthy, especially considering Dalvin Cook, while healthy last season, has not shown to be on the field consistently the 2 seasons prior to that. So in summary, why I'm excited about Adam Thielen is you already have a player who has proven to have a high percentage of the team's targets funneling over to him, with an increase in potential targets from an exit of another high contributor in the offense from a target standpoint, coupled with a healthy backfield last season that is not guaranteed to translate over to this season, which could potentially bring in even more upside for his involvement in the offense. And overall, what you get is a player with a relatively high floor and a top 5 ceiling. We've seen it in seasons past. Is it realistic to expect he's going to finish top 5? No, but I think the safety will make up for that. Remember, in the early rounds, we always want to have players that are safe and have consistent roles in their offense, and that's exactly what Adam Thielen has. Am I going to opt to draft him over other players around his ADP? Again, yet to be determined, but for right now, he leaves a lot to be excited about. Moving on to the final player on this list, and that player is Marlon Mack of the Indianapolis Colts. I'd be lying if I didn't say that early ADP does play a factor into this, but right now, there really hasn't been a ton of hype around Marlon Mack, and while he's not a player who I expect to finish as a top 5 fantasy back, but he's still a player who brings an incredible amount of upside that is not getting any of the hype that is potentially deserved. The big news in this is that Phillip Rivers is now an Indianapolis Colt, which means this team can still play winning football. In fact, potentially even better than they were last season, because it is an upgrade at the quarterback position. Jacoby Brissett, however, was fully prepared to take over this offense as soon as the news that Andrew Luck was retiring, but Phillip Rivers is a veteran. He's a savvy veteran who relies on the running back position. Yes, he makes a ton of mistakes, especially in the latter years in LA, but what better way to negate these types of mistakes than relying on a run game? On top of that, the Indianapolis Colts team, as it was even last season, was hyper competitive in these games. One concern when it comes to running backs is that if they fall down by a significant amount, their involvement in the offense in the late 3rd, 4th quarter is going to be slim to none. But with Phillip Rivers and the structure of this team as it is, they should be competitive in almost every game. Couple that with the factor that while Marlon Mack not typically known for his pass catching abilities, he's no slouch in the pass game as well. And what do we know about Phillip Rivers? He loves throwing the ball to the running back position. Melvin Gordon, a ton of receptions. Danny Woodhead, a ton of receptions. Ekeler, LT, all of these running backs in a Phillip Rivers led offense had a ton of receptions, and that's something we could see an uptick in with Marlon Mack's game in 2020. Nyheim Hines is also another player to keep an eye out for. It will be interesting to see how everything shakes up as we approach the season, but for now, you have a running back who was succeeding last season on an offense that should be even better with Phillip Rivers at the helm. The coaching staff is already talking about an extension for Marlon Mack, so they like him, they want to use him, and the quarterback choice that they're going to be leading the team with this upcoming season loves to throw the ball to the running back position. And even though he's not known specifically as a specialist in this area, if he's on the field and Phillip Rivers sees him open for a dump off, you best believe Rivers is going to make that pass. So for those reasons, right now I'm really excited about Marlon Mack. Let us know in the comment sections which players you're really excited about at this point in the offseason. Of course, everything is subject to change. We haven't yet had the NFL draft, which will definitely shake up a lot of positions around the league, but let us know the top players that you're pumped about. Thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.